Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is a chess show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today our esteemed guest is Professor Ken Regan. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on. I'm in my office
Yeah, we can see that.
in between advising students and meeting with my research students afterward. Yeah, so
Excellent. Ken, so what's happened in the last few days? Beside the fantastic play by Eric Isevich, you already mentioned.
well, that's what I'm gonna concentrate. Yeah, you will. Apart from the U.S. election and whatever, the real story is the fact that Arjun Erigaisi has promoted himself to world number 2 by rating. He is, let's see, is he in fact over the 2800 mark? He shows us 2799 in my window, but let me take a look at 2700 live chess. .com and see if he's actually over right now with this morning's result. And he is. Oh, he's way over. Well, I must have missed this before. He's up 10 points from the Chennai Grandmasters. So 27.99 was his official rating, and he's now at 29.03. So I can share my screen and get to this.
You said 2903 or 2803?
2803. Sorry, no,
28.
2809. I miss.
Oh, that's a gay. That's
Yes,
a great one.
I'm misspeaking here.
Ah,
So yes, so this is so he's even putting some distance for this. So let me see let me try sharing my entire screen, although it's
Okay.
my office screen. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But here we go. Let's see. Can you see 2700chess.com? He
Yes.
is 4 points ahead of Fabiano Caruana. We now do have 4 people above the magic 2800 mark, with a fair bit of distance to Gukesh, who, of course, is going to challenge Jing Liren, the other story for the World Championship in Singapore in under a month's time. As for Ding Liren, let's see, I can't see him. I see Hans Niemann down there. Oh, there he is. Ding Liren is almost into the bottom quarter of the 2700s. So he's not even in the top 20 in the world by rating, but he's a resilient fellow. We shall see
Yes.
what kind of chess he's putting on, but it is actually significant that Hans Niemann has a higher rating now than the world champion. However, going back up here to Arjun Erigaisi, who sort of flew under the radar. He wasn't featured in as many headlining tournaments of the past 2 years. But there he is now at world number 10. And the fact is actually that he is playing chess on another planet. So I can make an illusion that I remember from my childhood. Okay, it's an obvious illusion to make, but the game that I'm about to show you completely justifies it. So it's almost a century ago, Mir Sultan Khan created a sensation by coming to Europe from India as part of the entourage of a visiting Maharaja, and he defeated Capablanca, other grandmasters, won tournaments, became British champion, and he was known, or at least my book said, that he played a very unusual brand of chess.
Is it true that he was self-taught chess player?
I guess so. I have to say that his granddaughter, or some relative of that nature, spoke at the St. Louis Chess Conference in relation to a new study of his career. And she said that one of her purposes is clearing up a lot of the myths that have grown up around him. So I don't want to give too much credit to any myth, but what's on the chessboard speaks for itself. Hey, I'm quoting Niemann. And a lot of his games were fairly unusual, with unusual movements of pawns and attacks. Well, regardless of whether you appreciate my analogy to Mir Sultan Khan, it certainly is the case that the game from this morning, which propelled Erigaisi to a 3.5 out of 4 score, starting off the round robin Chennai Grandmasters. And it's only a 7-round tournament. So he's definitely in the driver's seat. He defeated his main rival, Amin Tabatabai, who was tied with him on 2.5 out of 3 coming out of it. Okay, so Erigaisi is black. And one thing I'm going to say right away is that it's not the case that this is a strategic masterpiece where black is winning and gains control in the whole game. In fact, after move 40, white was arguably better. But it is the case that the unusual full half-court press type of tactic, half-court being the king side, that Erigaisi showed eventually confused white after the time control. It's also meaningful to say that this tournament does not have a lump sum after move 40. So it is 90 minutes for the game plus 30-second increment. So it's not really correct to speak of move 40 as having any special significance, although we still tend to do so. And like I said, white rolled with all the unusual content for a long time in this game, but eventually fell under black's relentless approach. Okay, so this is the modern Giuoco Piano, but Erigaisi's intents are definitely anything other than piano. So black plays this rather than A5. I guess if you're not provoked by A4, you're more likely to play A6, but there comes A4. So now black voluntarily retreats the bishop so that D4 or B4 would not come with tempo. Here comes B4. And now Erigaisi starts his play. So feeling justified, and maybe this is partly because white has not developed the knight on B1 as early as sometimes happens in this. So if white's knight on B1 were already on F1, and let's retreat these two queenside pawns, then white is better equipped to not only stop black's expansion, but take advantage of some of the weak squares that are created that way. But white is not in condition to do so, and the computer actually does not like white's move. The computer either wants white to play the knight to D2 or to take advantage, make lemonade out of the two queenside pawn advances by shoring up the defense of some of the weak kingside squares, especially F2. So this is counted as a mistake because it's actually going to help black develop. It doesn't really add a piece to that wing. So, okay, so black is happy to capture, and now here comes the advance. And white can't react with knight H4 as is possible in some other positions, because the knight would just be hanging and white does not have reinforcements for it. So, okay, here comes black's other attack. We are attacking without developing. Our king is still in the center. You'll see that theme. So white reacts as you should. You react by breaking in the center to a kingside attack. But again, even though black is underdeveloped, white does not have all the reinforcements in place yet. In fact, white decided, well, I need to bring some cover to squares on the king side. Now, this is counted the one mistake by black. The computer says that black really could have gone ahead with the bonsai tactics and played G3 with the idea that when if white captures H takes G3, then black can play H3 and will have definitely softened up white's king side. Or black could have played rook G8 preparing this. So this move kind of, maybe its purpose was to avoid the trade of queens if white captures on E5, or maybe, second thoughts about maybe I should move the queen bishop and castle king side. But regardless, it does give white a tempo to react. And this actually interfered with black's development. And now white is equalizing the position on the king side with enough of the army. In fact, black's army was pushed back. So now black play, however, queen F8. This evidently was the other part of black's plan. I've got G4 defended, so I'll build up on the H file. So, and knight F1 is counted as a mistake. So the computer says that since black is moving slowly by bringing the queen there, it was time for white to take advantage by playing the c pawn to c4 and c5 and start generating threats against black's king. White would quickly be able to double rooks on the c file. And so, like I said, but knight f1 was a move that, I would have liked to see 7 moves earlier in the game. So you can't really fault white for playing it now. So queen h6, we'll ignore that the computer thinks black could react to it a5. That's just weird. Now white does the c4 plan, but has lost the tempo. Now, I'm not going to put a question mark on this move. Okay. So computer, I don't know, wants black to break with a5. I think that's just weird. I guess the idea is that it does enable a defensive c5. So anyway, g3 is the third best move. I'm going to ignore the computer and say this is the best move. Practically speaking, it's the best move. Okay. So white captured with the f pawn. It's an interesting decision. Is it really bad to capture with the g pawn? The answer is yes, because then white gets killed and down the file. Okay, so white captured with the f pawn, and f takes g3, and now h3. Okay, but black now is going to do the maneuver that could have seen. So the other question is, under what circumstances is black's pawn on g3 hanging? Black could retake the e pawn right now. Anyway, so black defends, white breaks. Okay, so black is just going to allow white through, but now white doesn't go about. So here I would say that some attempt to double on the c file could make sense, but actually no. Rook a3, what a move. White had weird moves too. Okay, so I think queen c1 is a completely natural move. And here comes black now. Bishop takes h3. Cracking through, and with the slow build up, he didn't have to take on h3 right away, because in fact, white has enough of a nest of pieces that there's not necessarily going to be a mate, even if black does deliver check on h1. So black prefers to give the option of taking on h3 with this knight. So here it comes. Now we'll be able to take on h3 with the knight. Black is a piece down, but okay, we are. So white decides here. Okay, so white actually has to do something about black's army, because in this position, this again, another really fine move here. It's a sacrifice, but sacrifice to get enough of the army for mate. Actually, what's going to happen is in some lines there, if you take on g5, there's going to be a fork with knight takes g4 check. So for instance, if this, then queen h1 check, king f2, and I fork your king and queen next move. Okay, and if white captures with the rook, then also queen h1 check, king f2, and this is winning your queen. Okay, so so that would be too strong an attack. So white therefore decides I have to eliminate black's piece. Whoops, I went to the beginning of the game accidentally by pressing the wrong button. But it's the end of the game. So white decides I have to eliminate the attacker. I'm sorry, here it is. So white goes and eliminates the attacker. And now what do we have? We have now a fairly normal looking endgame position. Black no longer looks undeveloped. But if you just count material, white has 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn, and the pawn that black has is backward. The only thing about white's position, though, is that white is all underdeveloped and black is threatening e4 and might be able to menace the queen side. But still, the computer shows that the game is basically even, and white does, in fact, outplay black for some of the following moves. Okay, so bishop f3, black now coming in with a 2-pronged attack. As I said, it's all very, very unusual play by black. Now black's position is perfectly normal, but white does have a plan. So what's ultimately governing this position is that here black cannot really attack anything of white's, whereas white is going to play b5, create a weak pawn on the queen side, and with the preponderance of minor pieces, white will be able to defend a5 much more easily than black will be able to guard a6. So that's the latent theme in this position, and here white puts it into action. Black now swinging the knight, okay, into play, at least able to come into f4. But now white wheels the bishop around and goes in and attacks black's game. So at this point, the game actually is objectively even because black's counterattack with knight f4 is just in time to hold the balance. And black's fallback to h6 is guarding d6, which is the linchpin of black's position in the center. But okay, white has won a pawn. Okay, now white has two pieces for a rook, pure and simple, and the threat to advance the pawn. Okay, rooks belong behind passed pawns. Here they go. We can attack. And now black finally launches the last pawn into the position. Again, another move that made me think of the analogy to Mir Sultan Khan. So even though the game is objectively even, black is still attacking, trying to pose problems for white's king. They're very vague, but here we go. We're at move 40. Both players had a reasonable amount of time left, 9 minutes for white, 11 minutes for black. And they did repeat moves, but then Erigaisi decided to not to repeat moves. And then finally came the mistake by white. Okay. So white's best move would have been to go ahead and take advantage of the of this weakness in black's position, even at the temporary cost of jettisoning the white's own passed pawn. So it turns out, this is really hard to calculate. It turns out that black cannot guard d6. Okay, but you have to worry about checks. Okay, so what are we going to do about rook h2 check here? Let's tell me, Mr. Computer. Oh, it's unpleased. Never mind. Okay. So no checks. And then if black plays rook b6, then white is able to do this. And, well, is this so good for white? Yeah, I guess it's really, rook takes h6 and knight takes e5. White may come out of this with a passed d pawn and win a piece for it, and then that would be probably a winning advantage. It'd be 3 minors against a rook. Okay, so white, however, mistimed. So down to 5 minutes, white mistimed the so defending the pawn first before threatening rook takes d6. And then I guess white simply overlooked the fact that the knight on d2 is pinned and cannot guard this pawn. Actually, that's another point that needs to be said that may be pretty obvious. So black can capture here, but then white can play rook takes d6 check and defuse the threat. Well, black can sacrifice the rook. Boy, this gets pretty weird. Black can jettison the rook, and then this is going to win 2 pieces back for it, but leaving probably a position in which white has an extra pawn. So black would probably fall back in this position. Okay, but for some reason, white played bishop f1 and may simply have forgotten that the e4 pawn was hanging. So this, unfortunately, is sudden disaster for white. And rook t6 coming too late. So let's see, is there really only one move? Well, black could have played rook h8 too. But it is true. Let's see, if black prematurely takes white's knight, what happens? White actually gets the advantage back with this move. And then if this, then you just capture Yeah, you capture and then you're making a queen with a7 because black's rook is out of play. Okay, so this is the sort of thinking that led white to believe that that even here there was enough of a counterattack, and I'm queening the pawn, and I got your rook off the a file. But black has, with 7 minutes left, found a supremely accurate move. So a threatening rook takes f3 check, again with the knight pinned. So the beautiful point of this is that if white goes ahead and tries to promote a pawn to a queen, okay, computer is actually saying this is mate in 8. Black captures on d2, and then black is going to play rook g2 check and rook h3 mate. So white being up a queen is just not going to help in this position. And in fact, there's no way for white to come back on defense. So white tried by at least getting the king out of the pin, but then came e takes f3, nice square for the king, took that. Okay, so again, I can easily see that white has the illusion that of gaining tempi and gaining squares, and now this to try to knock black's king out. But this was the final move of the game. I should have left it as a brilliancy find. So white's king is checkmated, except that black can play bishop takes e2. But after bishop takes e2, this is a discovered check. And then another check either on d3 or on h2 if white goes the other way is eventually going to cover the e1 square with check and create a new queen. So this was a very uncompromising game. I mean, white was perfectly fine as late as move 46, but when you're under pressure and get the ordering of moves in a plan wrong, this is the kind of thing that can happen to you. So,
Yeah, very, very interesting game. And I would like to ask you, what's your opinion if there would be a control without increments or delays, and it would be, say, 90 minutes per whole game?
So there is a rule. FIDE does have a rule that to consider something as classical chess, it must give 120 minutes to turn 60.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the right statement of the rule. So, any control with a lump sum at turn 40, and the 90 plus 30 complies because the 30 minutes, the increment reaches 30 minutes by turn 60. So the time control of the Chennai Grandmasters is the fastest control. I think that is rateable for norms. I'm not sure. I have to look. But it's some qualification of that kind. Obviously, faster controls like game in 90 minutes are counted as standard chess for rating purposes. But I think for the highest qualifications, you need the full 120 minutes for 60 moves.
What's significance of 60 moves? Why it's not 50 or 75? What's a 60 about?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's just it's a convenient benchmark. In fact, a lot of my own metrics are organized around it as a benchmark. It turns out to be a round number if you're going to give a 30-second increment. It's that adds up to 30 minutes for the 60 moves. And I guess it's the feeling that, well, so the other history of it is time controls used to be actually 2.5 hours or 2 hours for 40 moves.
Yes, correct.
And an hour for 20 more moves, which brings you to turn 60. And then after turn 60 was considered the Allegro phrase, yay amount for the rest of the game or increment.
So 60 is a magical number.
60 is, a historic number, given how time controls were structured going all the way back to World War II. So previous to that, it used to be there was as often a time control at 30 minutes. Time control at move 30. So it used to be that the time control maybe was even 2 hours from move 30. I have to look. What was the AVRO 1938 time control? Let me see if I can figure that out.
Yeah, interesting. I don't remember what was that.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's one thing. It's difficult for me to find this historic information.
Mhm.
Chess in Time by Edward Winter. Conversely, the powerful Carl Schlechter always reached the time control with 5 minutes to spare. Let's see what Winter says. Okay. Okay, well, he's talking about really old people, but let's see. So, Aldrich Durash once thought for 58 minutes on move 10 in the game. Let's see now. So this is about people spending lots of time on individual moves, but I guess I need to look at text time controls. Okay, so sorry. Let's look at historical time controls. Okay, historical tests. Let's see. By the 1880s, a format of 30 moves in 2 hours became popular, succeeded by 36 moves in 2 hours in the 1920s, and then 40 moves in 2.5 hours after World War II.
Yeah, that's Botvinnik's time control.
Right. Yes, that's. So I was right to remember that. So this is Encyclopedia Britannica, actually giving this. Okay, it's a good source there. But then quick chess. Okay, this isn't maybe recording the time control. It goes straight into the Fisher clock then, which is what gave us delays. Okay, so then it goes chess and artificial. Oh, it was a section of a larger issue on chess, of their larger article on chess. But anyway, that is the impression. So that's what historically brought that about. If I'm covering other news, the other news I should cover is the wrap up of the Women's Grand Prix tournament in Shymkent, Kazakhstan.
Goryachkina was trying.
Right. Alexandra Goryachka came. It was a little bit of a quiet ending, I'd say, because most of the games were drawn and the games involving the title holder. But she won the Shymkent Women's Grand Prix by half a point over Zhong Yitan, who's one of the contenders for the women's world championship. And then Bibisara Asabayeva, I think, had gotten out to a fast start, but she fell back 2 points behind the leader.
Yeah, I think she lost individual game to her.
She lost what? Yeah. And she was in a tie with Stavroula Tsolakidou, who was a relative newcomer.
From Greece, yeah?
From Greece, yeah.
Yeah, I never heard about her.
And Tsolakidou lost only to the top two players. So anyway, an interesting tournament.
Yeah. There are so many interesting tournaments these days. It's spectacular. You see, what's confusing is that there are so many formats. It's a round robin. It's a elimination system. It's a Swiss system. It's individual. It's team tournaments. It's a men's tournament and women's tournament, and different time controls, anywhere from blitz to active chess and to tournament chess and to classical chess. It's just enormous variety, which never been. 20 years ago, you couldn't even think about this.
Yeah, well, it's all good, and and of course, the fact of fast chess. I guess I can very quickly show Goryachkina's victory against Tan. If you have time for that,
very quickly.
Quite as long a time for it, but here we go.
Okay.
So I'll share just the tab of the game, and there we are, another win for Black. Let's see what tactics are also in the modern Giuoco piano that Alexandra Goryachkina was able to bring to bear. Well, one main difference is White played it very quietly with knight c3 rather than pawn c3. So this was the way the Italians founded their game. But now a very uncompromising choice by black to allow the isolated double pawns in the center.
G5?
Castles into this. Yeah, white should rearrange the c3 knight according to the computer and bring it to c4 where it can hit those weak double pawns. But as it is, white did that a little bit too late. Now white's playing the strategy, but black is now already able to attack. So the fact that you castled into the attack is what now has white in trouble in this position.
Ken, if it would be illegal, the best move after G5 for white would be reverse castle.
Yeah, I agree with you here.
Best.
So we will just see a very logical. So white battens down the hatches. This, however, move was a little bit excessive. Computer wants black to just jettison the G pawn and forget about the E pawn and forget about it. White's attacking with only the queen. But so here, computer says white could have stayed in the game by retreating the queen, but instead, this just enables black to break down the door. Okay, well, you won 2 pieces for a rook, and now more things are going to fall in white's position, and this a very nice move.
Very nice.
So this is what's going to clear white's rook off the H file ultimately. So now breaking through, and there, no more rook on the H file. Now black is able to take over the H file, and here we go. And white resigned because this is well, white's down a piece, and this is going to face more of an attack. So another very, very strong game with black.
I'm seeing all these Jokopiano games, and I think white has to come back to knight G5 on the 4th move. Otherwise, you're losing almost by force after H6, G5, especially if you already castle. And I mean, it's take no time.
Yeah, it's funny. You think it's a symmetrical position, but it also white's knight on F3 sometimes gets kicked by G4.
Yeah, and it's no longer symmetrical if white is castle already and black didn't. So there's no symmetry after that. So maybe white should a little bit wait with castle, maybe, or consider keep the king in the center. Or maybe retreat to a queen side, maybe. Then G5 strategy is not so dangerous for white. But anyway, I'm pretty sure we are going to see many, many games in that respect. Knight G5 nobody plays anymore, so I'm not expecting that to come back, although everything is possible. Ken, thank you so much for, sorry, just...
I had a couple of games with this in the U.S. Championship in 1978. And there, my feeling was, G5 would be weakening for black. But I guess people have realized it's not so weakening. So it has compensating advantages,
Well, in a perfect world, maybe it would be a weakening, but it will require so much effort for white to prove it. And so a precise and very accurate play, almost mistakes-free, and it's not so easy to do. In practical games, I think black has a lot of advantages after playing H6, G5, once white already castled. I think it's much easier to play, almost like you can play just by your hand without thinking much. And white is, game is not so easy. Ken, anyway, thank you so much for today's program and games, and see you next week, same place, same time.
Right.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Yep.
Bye.
Right.